So this is just a couple of ideas from Neil Postman's classic work, Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business. And it was published back in 1985, and it's a critique of what? It's a critique of show business taking over our politics. This idea that, everything's a one-liner, and kind of what that this merging of CNN with Entertainment Tonight, and the news becomes a kind of what, shticky and not necessarily comedic, but a sort of what in the pop culture, uh, something geared toward entertainment. I mean, I think that's it. That in the 21st century, especially, it's like everything has to be entertaining. And I think Postman's point is that politics, particularly conservative politics, tends to be pretty boring, and it should be civil, and it should be intellectual, and it can't be this endless stream of kind of salacious narratives. I mean, the stuff that's entertaining is you think of the genres like, you know, sex and kind of conflict, I think tends to, make it to the Entertainment Tonight, or, the National Enquirer, I guess, should be the first newspaper media of kind of what, entertaining news. And he didn't like that. So, all right, I'm just going to go at it here. The foreword. He says this, Neil Postman, right? Founder of the kind of School of Media Ecology at New York University. He says this. He says, "We were keeping our eye on 1984. When the year came and the prophecy didn't, thoughtful Americans sang softly in praise of themselves. The roots of liberal democracy had held. Wherever else the terror had happened, we at least had not been visited by Orwellian nightmares." And so you can see, 1984 is this classic work by George Orwell, and that's where we get this notion of Big Brother and the government, and the sort of top-down fascistic totalitarianism keeps, watches everything and controls everything about you, even in your dreams, even in your dreams. And that didn't really happen. I mean, the government looks over our shoulder to make sure, in America at least, that we're not doing anything dangerous, no forms of terrorism or something like that. I mean, the FBI is not looking at the average American, because we're just doing our business, right? So the idea here is we don't live in an Orwellian society, right? All right. And then Postman continues. He says, "But we had forgotten that alongside Orwell's dark vision, there was another, slightly older, slightly less well known, equally chilling. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World." And I have to say, I've read it several times. It's fascinating. You should go check it out. Postman continues. He says, "Contrary to common belief, even among the educated, Huxley and Orwell did not prophesy the same thing. They didn't predict the same thing. And they're very different." Uh, Postman continues. He says, "Orwell warns that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. Right? But in Huxley's vision, no big brother is required to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity, and history. Right? Autonomy kind of means self-volition and how you can control your own life. And maturity has to do with development. Right? So Postman continues, the last sentence here. He says, as he saw it, right, as Huxley saw it, people will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think. Well, you saw the Nick Carr video, I hope, and this question of, does all this technology make us dumber and weaker? And to what extent, especially, I mean, Postman doesn't really talk about this here, but he does in the book, that when we moved away from book culture and study and reading and literacy in favor of a kind of visual media in our pop culture, um it became kind of impossible in a way to take politics seriously. You can't really take public discourse seriously if it's kind of splattered all over visual media. And you guys have to reflect. I mean, to what extent do our new technologies like Snapchat and Instagram and Twitter and even like Wikipedia. I mean, this kind of the immediacy of an information overload. I mean, he's really coming out of information theory here to some extent. And if you have too much too fast, you can't really think anymore, and you lose your identity. I mean, so all right. So, last sentence, I'll read it again and move on. As Huxley saw it, people will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books, right? So this idea of censorship, I mean, I just think, you know, I mean, we don't face much censorship. I mean, you can pretty much get a hold of almost any media that you want. I mean, there's a couple of things that are outlawed, but certainly, I mean, the problem is not information in books, as you know. The problem is nobody's going to read books. And I think here, I'll just keep going here. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. Ooh. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism, right? So this sort of loss of a capacity for action. And what that does is it kind of warps the human personality to such an extent, right? If we become, impotent, weak, passive creatures, we get very bitter and depressed. And that's this kind of cry out of egoism. All right, I'll continue. Postman asserts Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance, right? And there's so much information you don't know what's valuable anymore. That's this notion of irrelevance that, if there was less information and it was of quality and we knew that, to study it or to see it or to enjoy it or to hear it, whatever, was valuable. But no, I mean, that's not what happens. I mean, you think, people kind of loose, people know what they're like, but their tastes are a product of their development, and therein sort of lies the problem, right? All right. I'll continue. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared we would become a captive culture, right? We'd be kind of imprisoned. Huxley feared we would become a trivial culture, right? That nothing of substance would matter anymore. None of our values and traditions would hold in the face of this novel media wave. All right, preoccupied with some equivalent of the feelies, the orgy-porgy, and the centrifugal bumble puppy. Well, I'll tell you what, I read the book, so I can tell you, the feelies, instead of going to the movies, people went to the feelies, and it was like this computer simulated sensation upon your flesh, like you were in a haptic suit or something, and it, like you could manipulate media in such a way. I mean, you could think of like, a massage chair or something. Uh, but, moving to this next one, because in Huxley's book, everything was sort of irrelevant and trivial. It's a study in a way of nihilism, right? If all media is geared toward satisfying the body, like we're in ancient Rome or something, everything becomes trivialized. So the orgy porgy is because everybody's having sex with everybody else all the time. And oddly enough, it becomes this uh it becomes a meaningless affair, and the lead character mumbles over and over again, like so much meat, to, that and then the centrifugal bumble puppy, instead of like automobiles where people could like kind of get lost in themselves, the centrifugal bumble puppy was this little flying plane, kind of like a cross between a plane and a helicopter and a car. But it was, really had to do a lot with like thrill seeking, um, flying fast. And I must say, before I close, uh, they're both really horrific tragedies in a way. And the argument of Huxley is that if all of our senses are gratified all the time, we lose any sense of meaning. And our capacity to be human is really fundamentally rooted in our ability to kind of strive and develop. And for Postman in this book, it has everything to do with the shape of our media. Yeah, the shape of our media and our popular culture. All right, last text here. As Huxley remarked in Brave New World Revisited, the civil libertarians and rationalists who are ever on the alert to oppose tyranny, right? Those would be like the leftists and the intellectuals, I guess, failed to take into account man's almost infinite appetite for distractions. There's that word again. I mean, Nick Carr used that word, and think about that. Failed to take into account man's almost infinite appetite for distractions. That's what, and so that's it. It's we lose sense of the focus of the higher capacities, and it manifests for Postman in the book. It manifests itself in political discourse and politics, and that's why everything becomes this ridiculous circus of kind of embarrassing, deceptive, and kind of what cacophonous, which means like something. It's a lack of harmony. Things just don't flow anymore. All right. Postman continues, he says, in 1984, Huxley added, people are controlled by inflicting pain, right? Big Brother tortured people, right? That's fascism for you. It's all about imprisoning people, beating them up, torturing them. That was 1984. In Brave New World, right? That's Huxley's book. They are controlled by inflicting pleasure, right? Too much pleasure in the wrong places, right? Too much distraction, right? Too much of what you love is not a good thing. That's it. All right. In short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. This book is about the possibility that Huxley, not Orwell, was right.